All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my friend Trevor Timm. Trevor is a columnist for The Guardian, which you can find at theguardian.com. He is also the co-founder and executive director of the Freedom of the Press Foundation, which you can find at pressfreedomfoundation.org. You can also find him on Twitter at Trevor Timm. Trevor, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
All right, so Trevor, you recently wrote a really great piece at The Guardian on how the FBI used to recommend encryption for us, and now they actually are working to ban it. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so this is actually really funny because the FBI director, Jim Comey, who I think you probably covered on your show before, has been on this crusade against end-to-end encryption on the internet. So that people are right now, because of what the NSA and the U.S. government is doing, have increasingly been encrypting their communications online so that only the sender and receiver of the information can receive it. And if the FBI attempts to intercept these communications without hacking into somebody's computer, all they get is gibberish. Now, encryption is kind of the bedrock of e-commerce and how we communicate online. All sorts of banks use encryption. If you want to send your private medical information from your doctor online, use encryption. Even common communication tools, some produced by Google and Facebook and others, use end-to-end encryption in their products. So it's not very controversial, at least in the internet security world. But the FBI is now attempting to ban it. Or not necessarily ban it, but at least force tech companies to create a backdoor into this encryption so that the government would always have access if they had legal process. But the really ironic thing about all of this is the fact that the FBI also says that cybersecurity is now the number one issue facing American citizens, and that we need to be able to protect our data because all of these criminals and foreign governments are trying to break into our computer systems and steal our credit cards and steal our social security numbers. And so it's really this kind of dichotomy where, on the one hand, the FBI is saying, we want to backdoor in everybody's encryption, but on the other hand, saying that we're all at risk. And up until very recently, they were actually saying that, explaining to people how they could encrypt their cell phones, like their iPhones or Android, by going into the settings and changing a few settings to enable encryption. So it's really this kind of hypocritical stance that the FBI is taking. And to make matters much worse, they kind of scrubbed from their website the fact that they had been advocating for this before.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous that the fact that they are wanting all of these tech companies, and again, one of the things that was exposed with some of the Snowden documents was the sort of backdoors that were put into so many of current software and even some hardware, but like not even like acknowledging the fact that that door exists actually makes it so much more insecure and actually opens up the door not only to FBI and NSA types of hacking, but any type of hackers that you might actually find, foreign countries, whatever. The fact that door exists, they somehow want to pretend that only they can go through it, but really, if somebody finds it in this code, pretty much anybody can go through it.
So, yeah, of course, this is the crux of the problem, which is that if you ask any security expert or researcher, they will tell you that it's impossible to create a backdoor for one party and not let it be exposed to other parties. So let's pretend for a second that we trust the U.S. government 100% to make sure they never overstep their bounds and they never abuse their power with this backdoor, which, of course, throughout history, we know is close to impossible if they won't abuse their power, but let's pretend they will. Even if you trust them 100%, criminals and other foreign governments will be able to find and exploit this backdoor. They'll be able to do it two ways. One, by just searching for it mathematically, finding the vulnerabilities in the encryption that you set, or two, they could actually steal the keys from the U.S. government and get it that way. We know that this has happened before many times in the past. There was a situation in Greece during the Olympics in 2005 and 2006 where they have what they call a lawful intercept phone system, where essentially, like the U.S., somebody can listen in on any phone conversation if they have the correct legal process. But some foreign government accessed the phone network through this, essentially what was a back door, and were listening in on Greek politicians' phone calls, including the prime minister. The same thing has happened with Google in 2010. All of their quote-unquote lawful intercept information, which they, basically had to comply with legal orders from the U.S. government, was stolen by China. So it's always a problem when there are companies or governments that are holding on to all of our private communications data, even if you trust them 100%, because they're not going to be able to protect it. It's basically, a law of internet security where if you have the keys to someone else's communication, they are at risk.